everyone, I'm here with the 7 Deadly Sins tag, which is a tarot tag that I'm actually not sure who started it. I'm going to try to find out and put the link below. I have seen Lisa Pappas do this. I've seen, I think, Boho Tarot do this. I've seen a few people do this tag. I think Candy, Soul, and Soil did this one as well. But I've seen a few people do this. I know this tag's floating around, so I wanted to get in on it too. So I'm going to switch the camera around and we're going to find out what my 7 Deadly Sins cards are. So the first deck that we're going to start with is Greed. So Greed is a deck that you just desperately wanted, that you really wanted to have no matter the cost. You were hunting it down, and for me that is the Mythic Tarot. So I had the original version, which was the version that apparently was made in the 80s that had the black backings, but I don't know if it got lost in a move or somebody borrowed it and never returned it, but I didn't have it anymore, and I really wanted it. There is a new Mythic Tarot, but the illustrations just aren't as good. But someone, a very kind follower, alerted me to this one, which is a edition, I think, from the late 90s or early 2000s that has a blue back to it, which I'm totally fine with, because what I really wanted was this. And I'm going to zoom in a bit if I can. There we go. So the illustrations on this I just love, and this was one of my first decks. It's the first deck that I really learned how to read the tarot from back in the 90s, so it does hold a very special place in my heart. It also has, I work with a lot of the, I guess, the Roman gods that have to do with astrology, and this contains a lot of them, so it does hold a very special place for me. I generally don't read with this deck for others. This is more of a personal deck that I use for myself, but I was very excited to finally get my hands on this again. It did come, I think, with the book. The box was trash though, which is fine. And I still have this cloth. Is still from, I have this still from the original deck I had from back in the 90s. Now the next deck that I have is Envy. So this is a deck you saw others with and you wanted it. And for me, that is the Dark Mansion Tarot. So when this came out, I feel like it was 2 years ago, maybe 3. I was just like, ooh, I really want that. And it's kind of expensive because it was like overseas. It's from Poland, from Taroteka Studios. But I was like, no, I really, really want this. I was seeing others have it and I was just like, I want this deck. So this deck, really love it. I would think it's like one of my first sort of independent decks. One of the first. I do have a couple, but before that. But I love this deck. It's so beautiful. I love the sort of Edward Gorey kind of drawings in here, the Tim Burton-esque type feel to it. It sort of has this Victorian-esque sort of morbid charm to it. It's also a little quirky. So I really wanted this deck, and I'm very, very glad that I got it. I work with it a fair amount. Like I usually use it in the fall. It's kind of Halloween-y, but not quite. So it's kind of, to me, that end of summer, early fall type vibe for me. So that is my Envy deck. The next deck that we're going to talk about is Anger, and Anger is a deck that made you angry. And the deck that made me angry is the Occult Tarot. So the Occult Tarot looks really beautiful. Ooh, look at that. It looked like it was really cool because it contains the 78 or the 72, pardon me, Goetic demons. I thought this could be really cool. It is a flop. Sorry about the lighting there. Okay, so again, this book looks really pretty on the outside. You're like, ooh, this looks great. No, it is a piece of poop, let me tell you. Let's get the lighting better there, I think. So this deck, it could be good. It could be really good. It is not. The person that I don't want to diss any authors or creators because so much work goes into these decks, but I feel like this was kind of slapped together because it's like, oh, demons are cool. Let's make a deck of demons. And so we have these illustrations on here of the different demons, and this comes from the Dictionary Infernal, these ones, but none of these have any particular connection to the tarot cards that they're assigned to, which is really frustrating. And then if you were a beginner and you looked in the book, for example, this is 8 of Wands, Ronov, and you looked at it, it said, it would just say this card corresponds with the 8 of Wands. Well, but what does the 8 of Wands mean? So it's it's not a good book at all. It's terrible for beginners. I don't know what this particular demon has to do with the Eight of Wands. What it really is it takes art from the dictionary Infernal, writes the little meaning of the demon, but there isn't any connection to the actual card. And I think it's trying to kind of shove a round peg into a square hole. It's trying to take the Goetic system and shove it into the tarot system, which it doesn't, you know, have to deal with. And yeah, I mean, I keep it because I like the illustrations from the dictionary Infernal, but it's not a good deck, and it could have been so good. So yes, that's the deck that makes me angry. Yes. So the next one that I have is the Lust. I wanted it just because it was pretty. And that is the Classic Rock Tarot cards. Now, this is not a terribly functional deck to read with, but I can't resist a deck that has Axel in it, that has all sorts of rock stars in it. So it's more of a just kind of a, what do they call, a novelty type deck. So, you know, we've got George Harrison there. We've got Janis Joplin as the Empress. Freddie Mercury is the Queen of Swords. Of course he has to be a queen. We have Neil Young in here. So it has like all these classic rock figures in it. Steven Tyler as the Nine of Swords. So you can see like he doesn't, I don't really think of him as having anything to do with the meaning of the Nine of Swords. But it was a cool deck that I thought looked very, very nice. And so I wanted it for the cool artwork. So that's why I would say it is in the Lust category. Oh, speaking of Lust, there's John and Yoko. It's Tina Turner. So it's just like it's a fun deck to have that's very kind of cool and pretty, so I enjoy that one. The next deadly sin that we have here is we have Gluttony. So Gluttony is a deck that you kind of bought because you wanted a deck. This one I saw in a bookstore. I don't have the original box anymore because it was the old Llewellyn style of flimsy boxes. And this is, why is this lighting so bad? Okay, there we go. This is the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. Now, it is not the style of art that I usually go for. I usually like things that are either sort of like fun and spooky cute or more classic, more Victorian, medieval, fantasy, that kind of thing. So this is definitely not my style, but something was kind of calling to me about this particular deck. And to be honest, I was in the bookstore, I was feeling down, and I wanted to cheer myself up with the tarot deck. But I am very glad that I got this one. I like working with it in the fall, usually the late fall. And it's one that I find has this kind of very stark sort of imagery. It's very basic. It takes things down to sort of these very symbolic, you know, basic type levels. The colors in here are not what I would usually go for, but it is one that I do love working with. So I am actually really glad that I got this particular deck. The next one I have is Sloth. So Sloth is a deck where you're just feeling lazy about things. And so this is the Angel Wisdom Tarot. I actually use this for daily draws because it is a little bit Oracle deckish. But I would put this in Sloth because you don't need to know the card meanings because they are written on the deck for you, which I think can be really great for beginners who are learning the tarot. But I also think it's nice to not have to think too hard. You just pick this up and you read the little message that's on the bottom here. It's a very gentle kind of deck. You know, we've got angels here. We've got butterflies. It is I love this. He's peeking around the tree like, hey, take this cup. Take this cup. It's just a really lovely deck. And it doesn't, you know, it doesn't require a ton of effort. It doesn't require tons of thought. It is just a deck that you can pick up, read the meanings off the front of it. Easy peasy, very straightforward. And finally, last but not least, we're going to talk about Pride. So Pride is a deck that you are very proud to have. You're glad you own it. Some say like bragging rights. I don't know. I don't really brag about tarot decks, that's for sure. But I am really proud to have this one. This is the first edition of the Spirit Keepers Tarot by Benabel Wen. I love Benabel Wen's stuff, and it's really cool that she made this deck for herself, like just for herself, but then people are like, ooh, I want that. And I'm really glad that I was able to get a first edition. I love that she drew this, you know, by hand. I think it's just a really cool deck to have. And now that there are, you know, these different variations of it, these different versions, it's kind of cool to have like one of the first edition ones. I think it's really neat. You know, and it's one where, you know, she made this and she mailed them all out and she did this herself. Like it's cool to kind of have something from a creator that you admire and that I've been following for a while. So it's really cool. I love the little piggy. He's so cute. Love these. A little froggy and goat. Like it's a really lovely deck with so much thought put into it. And you know, it's just kind of cool to have like a first edition version of this particular deck. So those are my 7 Deadly Sins tarot decks. I've been really enjoying watching everyone else's as well. Yeah, so I'm going to continue to follow that tag. Thank you so much for watching. As always, peace and love and rock.